Welcome to another episode. What are you reading? What are you writing? A weekly video podcast features creatives, writers, and readers, and we come together to talk about books. I am your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of 4 novels and counting. I am so glad you're here. I think you're going to enjoy our next guest. So I promised you an interesting guest. I do have an interesting guest today. So her name is E.C. Quinn. It's the name that she writes under. But her name is Elizabeth. It's also Liz. She has many names, but we are so glad. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
I'm so glad that you could join us today. So Liz is a life Elizabeth is a lifelong animal lover. She is an avid reader. She writes both children and adult books. She has 25 stories. I'm so jealous of this. No, no, not jealous, just happy for you. 25 stories in Guide magazine, 2 stories in Chicken Soup for the Soul, and she is enjoying a career of writing after having been a physical therapist and a copywriter, but now she's a full-time writer. She's going to talk to us. I love this color, Elizabeth. I love this cover. It is so beautiful. Premonition, The Gift. And it's a middle grade adventure series. And here's what one reviewer wrote. Says it takes readers on a captivating journey filled with mystery, friendship, and the power of trusting one's instincts. Can you show us the beautiful book?
This is Premonition, the gift, and I do love the cover. Oh my
It's
gosh, amazing.
beautiful. It really is. And what a sweet face he has. Such Thank you so much. Okay, so let's start with your protagonist. Tell us about Sammy. Tell us about what kind of kid he is and kind of what you like about him. Tell us about Sammy.
So Sammy, I love Sammy. Not that you have favorites, you love all of your characters, but I've been writing this series. I started about 10 years ago, and my kids were little. So if you took all 3 of them, rolled them together, they would be Sammy. And I think that is part of why I love him so much, because I can see each of my kids in him. He's a regular kid. He's kind, he's honest, he's very loyal to his friends. Um, and yet he gets in scrapes. He's dealing with bullying at school. He has a fallout of a friendship. His dad has left, so he's feeling quite alone, lost, doesn't know if dad is coming back. So that kind of is how the book starts out, when we first meet Sammy.
Yeah, oh, he sounds wonderful. How old is Sammy?
Sammy's 12.
He's 12. I have a 13-year-old grandson. Um, do you think this book is too old for a 13, 14-year-old? Or
You
it's mostly
know,
younger kids?
Honestly, it's pegged as like a 9 to 12. However, many, many, many of my readers have been adults, which surprised me. I think the oldest was like an 80-year-old woman who loved it, loved Cal, another character, the mouse that's on the hat in the picture is Cal, and she connected with him so much. So, yes, it's a kid's book, but adults have also enjoyed it.
That is wonderful. And I do enjoy. I try to read all the books that my grandson reads so that we can talk about them. So I totally get that. So what's the premise of the story? What's the adventure?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned that it opens with, Sammy's being bullied. He has a fallout with a friendship. His dad has left. And then, so he's feeling pretty unloved, pretty low. He has this dream and he thinks it's just a nightmare, falls out of his hammock, and he wakes up with real blood and fur on his hand. And he freaks out and he goes to his mom and he's waiting for her to just blow it off and say, "Oh, it was just a nightmare, honey, let it go." But instead, mom gives him a letter from his deceased grandmother saying he has the gift. and that
Mm.
sends Sammy on on an adventure. He follows the little white dog from the dream and gets into all kinds of scrapes. He ends up in a life-threatening situation. I won't give it away. A life-threatening situation where he is suffering, animals are suffering, and he's being called to save a lot of lives, including his own.
Sounds beautiful. That's so beautiful. Um, so this is the first book, right, of a series. So
Yeah.
have you started the next one? Is it already in the works? Tell us about that.
This is super exciting and literally perfect timing because yesterday I printed out the draft of Premonition Book 2. So yesterday I gave it to my mom. I have a copy, she has a copy. Mom is always my first reader of literally everything I've written. So she told me this morning she's 31 pages in, and I'm like, whoa, you go, mom. I'm going to let it sit for a week or two, then I will dive in and start revision as well, but it's very exciting.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Such a good, that's such a good feeling when we get that book finished and we're ready to send it to beta readers. And that's such a wonderful, wonderful feeling. So, I also heard, or maybe I read, that you have an adult psychological thriller coming out too.
So that book, yes. So as I mentioned, I've been working on the Premonition series for about 10 years. And I didn't plan to write middle grade despite all the children's stories and things, but the idea wouldn't let go. So about a year and a half ago, I got hit with an adult idea, psychological suspense. That's what I love to read, and it was a joy. I am still working on that book, but it was a joy to write and a challenge because it's like, will I be able to figure it out? What if I can't get my character out of, the predicament? But I loved writing that book. Love the Premonition series as well. They're just different.
Yeah. So is that one, what stage is that one in?
So that one is also with some beta readers. I'm doing another round of revision kind of simultaneously because I have gone through some drafts with that one, but there's always little things. And
Mhm.
sometimes as the author, we're questioning it and it's like, oh, is that a big thing? Is that something I don't want to add detail or length to? So I'm looking forward to some reader feedback at this point.
Well, you may have 2 books out next year.
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool? It'd be very exciting, yes. So when you are writing for young people versus when you're writing for adults, what are some of the things that are similar? What are some of those things that are challenging? You mentioned a challenge already. You were saying you were asking, will I be able to figure it out? Will I be able to figure out what happens? What are some of the similarities and what's some of the differences or challenges?
So I think like something that's always on my mind is with dialogue, making sure it's appropriate for the age group, for the
Mm.
situation, adult versus kids, and being authentic to like, is this how kids would talk? Is this how Sammy would respond? Is this how his friend would respond? And in the adult book, there's a mother son, and making sure that there is a difference in that voice, in that dialogue, so that's a big thing. And then the themes. Um, you can have a little bit darker theme and middle grade as well, but how you handle that. You don't want to get too dark. And yet kids are dealing with some heavy topics as well. So I'm aware of the approach to that. As well as in the adult one, there's a missing friend, and I won't give away that one either, but and what happens to her, but how I approach that, I'm very aware, of that. And I think they're both challenging, but in different ways. I pulled a lot from my kids' experiences and I worked in schools back in the day. So I pulled from that as well for the kid part. And then for the adult one, often it was like readers I really admired or, stories that I like to read. I wanted to write something that I would love to read.
Something that you would love to read. Now, how old are your children now?
So now they keep growing. I
Oh,
don't know.
what's this
I
about?
I know. So my youngest is 17, he's a senior, and then I have, a sophomore in college, my middle
Mm,
son, and then my daughter is the oldest, and she's 22, and she's in grad school. So
wow.
that's the
Wow, that's
gamut.
wonderful. Do they love your books?
They do. They have been wonderful, wonderful, and a lot of questions like, "Hey, is this what somebody would say?" Or "If this happened, how would you react?" Staged like that. My middle son gets the tech questions when I'm trying to compile and do that sort of thing. So they all have their little specialties with helping mom.
That's very, very cool. Very cool. So our series is called "What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing?" And so, were there any books or authors that had a really big impact on your either writing kids' books, writing adult books, on your writing life? Any authors that really had a big impact?
Yeah. So immediately I would think of like the very first series that pulled me in as a child was the Little House on the Prairie books.
Mm.
And I mean, I was into the TV show. I read every single one of those. I owned every single one back when Walden Books would put the fancy plastic cover on the hardcover. I just treasured those books. So that was like my start. And then Nancy Drew. And I liked series even back then. And then as an adult, thinking Mary Higgins Clark was just every single one of her books. They would
Yeah.
come out usually at the time around my birthday. So for like decades, I would get her book for my birthday. I loved her books so, so much. But oddly, it was her memoir, Kitchen Privileges, that
Hmm.
spoke to
Didn't
me.
read that.
It I've read it like 3 times. There's not a lot of
Oh,
books that I reread, but that one, oh my goodness. It just told of her writing journey. She was a stewardess. Her husband passed away young. She had 5 children, and she would get up at 5. She'd write at her kitchen table before she went to work. And her first book, which was Where Are the Children, was turned down. It was rejected over and over and over.
mm, mm.
And of course, it becomes this amazing, knockout book that then launches her entire career. So that is just so inspiring to me. So I
Yeah.
always, she was like a favorite, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed her books when I was younger. I remember reading, and then her daughter became
Yeah.
an author too, right? Her daughter started writing with her and then
Yeah.
writing on, yeah. No, that rejection thing, we all live with that rejection thing.
Mhm.
This part of our life, right? Have you read something recently that you enjoyed and that you could recommend to our audience?
Yeah, so one that I really like, and Claire Swinarski is a Wisconsin based author, and I'm also Wisconsin, so there was that connection. But what I love about Claire is that she's kind of doing what I hope to do in the fact that she writes middle grade. This was one, What Happened to Rachel Riley, was one of her most recent middle grade books. And I love the way she tells it in a little unique way because she uses voice recording, she uses text messages, emails along
Mm,
with the prose, and I kind of
mm,
like that. But then Claire also writes YA and she writes adult. And The Funeral Ladies of Ellery County is her most recent adult book, which I have liked equally well. And to be able to see how Claire does that, how she goes back and forth between adult and kids, and then the YA is, I always think of kind of being in between the
yeah.
two, and just so seamlessly. So those have been a favorite. Definitely. And my goal was always in our local bookstore. I wanted my book next to Claire because I was like, oh, look at her, in the local author section.
Yes, that is very cool. So, how can, uh, there are parents, there's so many parents watch our show, grandparents watch, uh, so how can anybody find you and ask you questions and buy your book and write reviews?
Yes, love that. So I love connecting with readers, with writers, parents, kids, everybody. So I do have a website. My author website is ecquinnauthor.com. And visiting me there, I do have, like, if people want me to visit a school, there's a sign up, a contact sheet
Mm,
for that. Also, I would love it if people want to connect with my newsletter. So there's a sign up for that, as well as some writing and reading resources that can be kind of fun. So the website would be a good place. And then as far as social media, I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook under
mm,
EC Quinn author.
yeah.
So that would be probably the best place you could find me.
And on your website, can they get to your other social media links? Are there links to
Yes.
get you there?
Yep,
So
absolutely, absolutely.
perfect,
And
perfect, perfect. So if you want to, and I know you do, you want to follow EC Quinn, Elizabeth, and you want to be in touch with her, and you want to read her books and encourage her for the ones that are coming, right? And know when when they're coming out. Please go to her website and touch right into the contacts and let her know that you met her on what are you reading? What are you writing? Until next time, everybody, I'll see you next week, next Tuesday, for a new author and a new book. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Bye, everybody.